Since January 20th, 2025, the Trump regime has been consistently and blatantly desperate to roll back decades of progress. Things that we've long taken for granted, like voting rights, women's bodily autonomy, marriage equality, have been on the chopping block. And quite frankly, they have been successful in many instances in eroding our constitutional rights. So, first, I want to talk about the very real possibility that Obergefell, the case that made marriage equality in this country a reality, may be overturned by the current corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court. I also want to discuss how Donald and that corrupt, illegitimate supermajority could very well bring gay rights in this country back to the 1950s. We've all heard that the Supreme Court may revisit that landmark Obergefell case, and that everything we have worked for and generations of others have worked for could come to an end. But as we discuss the future implications of this, the people who would be affected by this law are often being left out of the conversation. Here's ABC Action News speaking with a Tampa couple about how potentially detrimental this direction is, and also speaking with legal experts on the case's viability.
This framed pen and picture inside Mark Bias West and Carrie West's house means more than the ink inside the cartridge.
We have the first signing of the pen, and it's on our wall. We have it framed up here with Mayor Bob.
It's the signature, the pen ink, that makes it a sentimental item.
Well, we kind of pioneer a lot of different things out there.
In 2013, the two became the first same-sex couple to legally become domestic partners in Tampa. They married 10 years later thanks to the Obergefell v. Hodges ruling in the Supreme Court, legalizing marriage equality nationwide.
And that is a very big effort of saying that, yes, this is what we think of the community, this is what we think of the neighbors, this is how we treat the people around us.
But there is a chance that very court case could be overturned. I went to two local legal experts to get the facts straight on where gay marriage stands and what could be ahead.
We don't know whether they're going to take the case at all. If they do take the case, they might not take up her invitation to overrule Obergefell.
Ms. Davis has not done well in litigation so far, including before the Supreme Court. In 2020, a sort of earlier version of this case.
Here's the backstory. Shortly after gay marriage became legal, a Kentucky clerk named Kim Davis refused to issue a marriage license to a gay couple, citing her religious beliefs. She was ultimately sued by the couple she refused to serve. Now she's asking the Supreme Court to intervene.
Almost 95% of the cases that end up at their door go nowhere, which means that whatever the lower courts did it remains good law.
However, just because these two lawyers agree it's not likely her case will be taken up, they both say it could open the door for another case to challenge same-sex marriage.
Because the court has been receptive to trying to balance free exercise of religion claims against claims based on Obergefell of the rights of same-sex couples. And I think that's the tension where you have two constitutional claims in opposition to each other.
And as we wait and see what the future of marriage equality looks like, here's how the West feel the Supreme Court may vote.
It's not the way it used to be. It's not the way that we anticipate justices to be, but it's not a fair, balanced justice system anymore in the United States.
This is the way this corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court works. They take a case or they refuse to take a case and very clearly outline what kind of case would in the future get their attention. So somebody like Kim Davis and her legal team can craft another legal argument, bring another case that is more suited to the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court's preferences. That gives them better standing, that gives them more legitimate reasons to rule exactly the way they want to rule in the first place. Now, of course, it doesn't matter if their ruling is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter at all. if the legal underpinnings of their decisions are shoddy and irrelevant, we've seen time and time again, they don't give a shit about precedent or the Constitution. My daughter was about 11 or 12 years old when the Obergefell case was decided and marriage equality became the law of the land. She was in her early 20s when, for the first time, I believe, in American history, she suddenly had fewer rights than her parent when the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade. So we're looking at a potential of another constitutional right being taken away from this generation, my child's generation. I don't understand why anybody would be okay with that. But apparently, everybody in the fascist Republican Party and everybody in the corrupt illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court is. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what the rest of us think. This is just one of many attacks on the LGBTQ plus community. The Trump regime is also trying to erase trans people from our history. They're denying trans people's ability to serve in the military. They're getting rid of gender affirming care. They're removing trans children from athletics throughout school, not just in college. They're cutting funding for mental health resources for LGBTQ youth. They're villainizing trans and gay people, associating them with pedophilia, and endangering their lives in so doing. They're removing any curricula or books that mention gay marriage or different sexual orientations or gender identities from schools. They are trying to erase us. They are trying to erase your neighbors, your friends, your children, your siblings, you. These people want a straight, white, Christian version of America. They want America to be a Christian country, even though it is most decidedly not, and it was not founded to be so. Of course, it's not just gay rights they're coming for. We already know that they've been going after women's reproductive freedom quite successfully. They've been going after voting rights, which impact mostly minority populations. Some members of Donald's inner circle have been floating the idea of banning women from voting entirely. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reposted a terrifying tweet last week that is raising the alarm on what Donald's next move in this area could be. Slate reports, quote, the video Hegseth reposted was about the influential pastor Doug Wilson, a leading theologian of the Christian nationalist right. In the clip, a female CNN reporter, Pamela Brown, followed Wilson around his base in Moscow, Idaho, how appropriate, where Wilson explained his particular biblical views on gender. In his vision of an ideal Christian society, Brown noted women wouldn't be able to vote, unquote. Well, that's what the SAVE Act is all about, right? That was already passed by the House of Representatives. The SAVE Act requires women who want to vote, who have the audacity to want to vote in this country, to have two forms of ID, and their names on those IDs must match. Their name on their driver's license must match the name on their birth certificate, or the name on their passport must match the name on their birth certificate. What group of women does this impact? Well, obviously, women who've changed their name. Why do most women change their names? Well, to marry men. So, if married women can't vote, I guess we're just going to have to leave it up to the man of the house to decide. Slate, following good journalistic practices, noted that Hegseth posting a news segment doesn't necessarily mean he shares every view expressed in it. Well, that's a little bit hopeful. So this week, in order to clear up any misunderstanding, they reached out to the Pentagon. They asked directly, and in the final line of the very brief email, quote, does Secretary Hegseth believe women should have the right to vote, unquote. The Pentagon's response, given by Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell, said, quote, hello, thanks for your note. Here's our statement. The secretary is a proud member of a church affiliated with the Congregation of Reformed Evangelical Churches, which was founded by Pastor Doug Wilson. The secretary very much appreciates many of Mr. Wilson's writings and teachings, unquote. In other words, Pete Hegseth does not believe that women in America should have the right to vote. I am sick to death of being told how I can live my life by a bunch of narrow-minded religious fanatics who are all almost exclusively white men. I am sick to death of people pretending that they are better than we are because they pretend to believe a particular way. They want to take us back to the 1950s. They want to take us back to the 1850s, for God's sakes, where women have no right to vote, where nobody but white, wealthy men have access to the ballot box. They want to take us back to a time when actual human beings were enslaved. I am not kidding you. I am not being hyperbolic. They want to reverse all of the progress that has been made, not just in my lifetime, but in the entire 20th century. So what are we going to do? It is long past time we take our country back. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.